from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up on Ag Day, views on the current ag economy hold strong while long-term outlooks are tempered by fear of what's ahead. Boots are on the ground for our next AgDay harvest update.
I'm Betsy Gibbon. Much of Illinois received a deluge of rain right in the heat of planting. And did that create some problems that carried into harvest? We'll have that story ahead on the show.
In agribusiness, could China's push for E10 blends come at the cost of soybeans?
Maybe the market's misjudging what China is going to be needing from us in the future.
And an Italian winemaker in search of the perfect wine, thanks to the help of Mozart.
Ag Day, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. As farmers rush to the finish line with the 2017 crop, sentiments about the ag economy appear to be holding steady. However, the latest ag economy barometer from Purdue and the CME raising questions about how confident they are in the future. The September barometer posting a 132. Now that's the same as August, and it falls within the range of the barometer over the past 6 months, staying between 130 and 139. But that 132 mark is still well below the peak of 153 from last January. Purdue and the CME group team up for this survey. It's based on answers from 400 producers. A sub-index gauges current conditions, and it climbed to its second highest level since the survey began back in the fall of 2015. However, looking out farther, farmers aren't so confident.
But the interesting thing when you look at it, even though we had no change in the barometer itself, was we did see some changes in the underlying sub-indices. The index of current conditions and the index of future expectations. And in particular, it was interesting to note that we've seen a fairly sharp drop-off in the index of future expectations, meaning that producers have lost some confidence that they had about where the U.S. ag economy was headed.
Another question on the survey asked about trade. 59% of those surveyed say NAFTA is good for U.S. farmers and ranchers. 41% saying it's bad for ag.
The I-80 Harvest Tour is brought to you by the Enlist Weed Control System. More weed control, less drift and volatility, maximum yield potential.
USDA's latest crop progress report says Illinois corn harvest is 21% complete. That's 17 points behind the 5-year average. Soybeans, they're the opposite, 30% cut, which is 9 points ahead of the 5-year average. The weather has been highly variable across the state this season. National reporter Betsy Gibbon stops in Illinois this week to see how an imperfect year hasn't dampened hopes for a bumper crop.
Clinton, like much of the Corn Belt, Illinois farmers faced some challenges in the beginning of the season. Farmers worried in late April when a deluge of rain came with a storm that it would create some issues in the crop. But as the crop progressed, so did their optimism.
Golden fields are asking to be harvested as Joel Barrickman rolls through his first set of soybeans.
Got it going early this morning here, and it's, the beans are about 11 or 12% moisture, which is pretty ideal.
You can't sit still either because you never know what the weather's going to be. And so this is bean weather.
Barrickman doesn't have to harvest much in Ancona, Illinois to see a big bean crop is there.
Last year, the good ground was averaging low 70s. We didn't quite get as much moisture this year, but surprisingly, we're seeing very similar yields out here to what we had last year.
Joe Zumwalt and his crew are at it too.
My least fun job is the grain cart, and guess where I am?
The Zumwalts are down the road in Warsaw, Illinois, where it appears to be the lucky spot this year.
Probably lower 90s on this field that you're looking at behind me. Again, we're amazed by what we're seeing out here. That's not the case with every field, but overall farm average probably should come in around 80 on soybeans, probably in the 220 to 240 range on corn.
Are you pleased with that?
Quite, especially given our adverse weather that we had this year.
He's referring to a late April storm, which brought a deluge of rain to much of the state, right in the heat of planting.
Those heavy rains in April when people were planting really separated the good soil from the bad. And I think that you're going to see when harvest comes in here that you're going to have a lot of people with really excellent yields, and you're also going to have a significant amount of acres that were really hurt.
Barrickman says he planted some of his best ground before the storm, which helped.
We did have, I think, a little bit of population loss on the corn that was planted before that, but At the same time, I think we're ahead with that corn, because if you had waited, you were going to be 2 or 3 weeks later getting that corn in the ground. You know, I'd say that over my whole farm, my average might come in somewhere close to my APH. As far as soybeans go, I think I'm going to be above across the board.
Ideal yields for both during a time of imperfect prices.
$3 corn and $9 soybeans, there's a lot of break-evens that falls below.
Commodity prices are still, you know, pretty darn tough. The price of corn right now is at below break even. And so moving forward, you know, obviously in the next year or two, it'd be nice to have some opportunities to sell corn at some more profitable levels.
As conditions stay fit, both continue to harvest in their fields, thankful for a bountiful crop, but hopeful for better prices. Reporting for AgDay, I'm Betsy Gibbon.
All right, thanks, Betsy. And just to the west, Iowa land values seeing life gaining for the first time in 3 years. Our partners over at Landowner Newsletter reporting Iowa farmland values rose 2% from 6 months ago. A semi-annual survey from the Iowa chapter of the Realtors Land Institute revealing land values saw stronger gains in the central to eastern areas above I-80, mainly due to those summer rains. But where dry weather set in across the western third of the state, land values saw smaller gains. Harvest is rolling across the country. Mike Hoffman has that in today's Crop Comments from Michigan. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Clinton. Yeah, that's right. Ken Zom sent us this picture on Facebook. He says they're combining soybeans near Coopersville, Michigan. So far, moisture is running about 9% and yields are average. The area has been really dry lately. All of their wheat was planted into dust, but otherwise the harvest weather has been beautiful. And sugar beet harvest is chugging along in North Dakota. Tom Kennelly says it's a very nice crop this year considering how wet it was in 2016, followed by the drought in 2017. He says he's shocked by how good yields are. Now he just wishes the prices were a little bit better. And congratulations to Paul Kronberg, our October cover photo winner. He took this picture along the St. Croix River on the Minnesota-Wisconsin state line. Send us those photos to AgDay on Facebook or Twitter for your chance to win an AgDay hat. And let's take a look at the latest root zone moisture. Boy, is it wet in the northern and west central plains, but it's turning drier in the central and eastern parts of the Corn Belt. We'll talk more about that and have your forecast coming up. But first, here are some hometown temps.
Save time each day and receive the latest market prices directly to your cell phone with market updates. It makes it effortless to stay aware of shifting market prices. Just text Markets 8 to 31313 to get started.
All right, when we come back, we'll check on markets and talk about the impact of China's decision to add ethanol to its fuel and what that could mean to U.S. farmers. And later, a musical harvest in Italy. These vines sharing their fruit with help from Mozart.
AgDay, brought to you by Alivo Seed Treatment from Bayer. Protect your soybeans from SDS and nematodes this season.
In agribusiness, Tuesday turned into a mixed day for markets. Let's head to the CME floor and find out why.
This is Joe Veklich from CME Group here in Chicago. The lean hog market was higher here on Tuesday. Our nearby October contract traded limit up at one point in the session. So a very, very strong trade in those October futures following a multi-week sell-off that spanned certainly more than $10 a hundredweight. So we're seeing a little bit of a bounce here. Whether or not it holds, I'm not too sure. Oversupply has been a topic that's been on the radar of a lot of traders here recently. Packers in this country are on track to kill a record number of hogs this year, and that's why the board, especially these nearby futures, have been under pressure. So, you know, a lot of that's been priced in, and now we're seeing a little bit of a recovery effort. We'll see if that's able to hold. Interestingly enough, despite the big sell-off and subsequent bounce we saw in the nearby futures, some of the back-month deferred hog contracts posted some fresh multi-month highs today. So we've seen some bear spreading in the market, and the market very much telling us that we're oversupplied up front, but that perhaps things could loosen up a little bit down the road. And, you know, a bear spreading market certainly a sign of an oversupplied market in general. Again, Joe Veklich from CME Group here in Chicago.
Dustin Johnson with Ag Yield, our guest here at the Agribusiness Desk today. Dustin, let's talk about some of the demand moves that are happening around the globe, and a lot of it driven by a pursuit of using more ethanol in fuel. And let's just talk about China, because they're talking about going to an E10 blend. What, by 2020?
Yeah, by 2020 they're expected to their reliance on the ethanol is going to grow. Right now they have capacity to produce about 6 million metric tons worth of corn equivalent, and they're going to be growing to closer to about 50 in a matter of a very short time. And so we're going to see these things start to ramp up very quickly. We know how fast China moves on things, and that could start to change the dynamic of what China relies us on.
Yeah, explain that.
Well, right now, we're obviously exporting more than close to half of our bean crop, and so our entire market is basically China. It not only supports our bean prices, but the competition for other acres that could be going on that ground that are being planted beans. So if China starts to maneuver to more of a basket, because they do have a local need for corn, and that translates to the byproduct DDGs, that could start to displace some of their growth for beans. By that I mean maybe they start to level off on their growth pace on the amount of beans that they're importing, at a time that we're also seeing increased competition from South America. We're pricing a pretty good sized premium for beans out forward. Maybe the market's misjudging what China is going to be needing from us in the future.
Yeah, maybe they'll need more corn to fill that, and then, of course, we're losing some of that bean demand.
Yeah, the pendulum of the corn versus bean pricing, it tends to maneuver in good trends, and then when it switches fast and for a long period of time as well. If you go back just 6-7 years ago, the same could be said about the ethanol boom. Either we're never going to produce enough corn to meet the needs. The blend wall was, in the future is kind of on our minds, but it wasn't really an issue until we got to the blend wall.
Right.
And I think the same rhetoric is kind of heard today in soybeans. It's like, okay, well, whatever we grow, China is going to actually buy from us and use. And we're seeing potentially feed demand leveling off, as well as the switch over to E10. That could impact our future exports with them. The growth pace may not be as fast as we think it is.
Yeah, and China's not alone. We're talking India or Mexico, a lot of different places around the country doing the same switch. Dustin, appreciate you being here. We'll be back with more Ag Day in just a minute.
For more information on ag yield, please call us at 855-266-6241 or visit us at www.agyield.com. Ag Day, brought to you by John Deere. Where can you find the most comprehensive inventory of John Deere certified pre-owned tractors, combines, and sprayers? MachineFinder.com. Sometimes the best new addition to your fleet isn't new. Ag Day weather, brought to you by Kawasaki and the new Mule Pro FXR side-by-side. Ride like a boss with high-end styling and rugged capability.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman looking at the root zone moisture map, and boy, it becomes a kind of a two-picture map, doesn't it? Where it's getting a lot more dry there in the middle of the country in Illinois, but wetter in the northern plains, northern Rockies.
That's been the pattern, trough in the west, ridge in the east, and that's kind of what it leads to. But we are going to see some things moving along as we head through this week. So that means we'll see some of this moisture that's been stuck over the western plains moving east across the middle Mississippi Valley into the eastern Ohio Valley, and that should help these areas, but I have a feeling it's going to be kind of a come and go type thing, although we may see a front kind of lay across that area, which could give you more than one day of moisture in those sections. So that could be some good news. This is the front I'm talking about. We're going to see at least some scattered showers today from the Great Lakes back into the central Mississippi Valley, but especially off to the west, a little closer to that area of low pressure, we're going to see some decent rains parts of Oklahoma, panhandle of Texas into Kansas, as the very warm high pressure system in the southeast is replaced by a slightly cooler one over the northern plains. Heading through tonight, then you can see how this front kind of stalls out here, so that'll give additional chances, but you'll notice there's just not a lot of moisture along that front at this point. Once we see this system coming back northward as a warm front, then we start to moisten things up over parts of Iowa. That's the system that we kind of hope spreads a little bit more into Illinois than our model is showing there. But at least that gives you a chance as we head through the day tomorrow. And actually, with this system kind of hanging out, you'll have some additional chances after that. We'll have to watch this area of low pressure in the Gulf of Mexico as well. as we head through the end of the week, see if that develops into anything. There's the precipitation estimate past 24 hours from Texas on northward. You can see as we add on the next 36, we'll continue to add some in the central plains there. Lighter amounts farther east, but at least some developing into the central and eastern Ohio River Valley. Snowfall mainly confined to the higher elevations, but Haver, Montana already broke a record for October for snowfall amounts. Over 2 feet of snow in parts of that area. So really significant snow in that part of the country. And that's where the cold air is. High temperatures this afternoon, only 30s and 40s there. 70s and 80s, though, as you get farther east into the Ohio Valley southward. You can see the cooler air trying to come southward. So we have lows tomorrow morning in the 40s and 50s. Great Lakes into the northeast. And then you kind of stay cool north of the front, but pretty warm to the south of it. And there's the jet stream. You can see the ridge trying to hold on. We have little troughs trying to dig into it, but it's not going to be a real cold shot of air until perhaps next week when we start to see some of that moving into the northern tier of states. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. Heading to Fresno, California, first of all, lots of sunshine, rather warm, high around 80 degrees. Spencer, Iowa, mild with times of sunshine and clouds, high of 65. And Charlotte, North Carolina, a good deal of sunshine and nice, the high around 79 degrees.
When we come back, we'll check in with the folks from the Packer, including an update on hurricane damage in Puerto Rico and Florida, plus putting a twist on a classical wine. We'll take a trip to Italy later on AgDay.
AgDay, brought to you by the Enlist Weed Control System. More weed control, less drift and volatility, maximum yield potential.
In the Packer TV, Puerto Rico making pleas for help as some leaders estimate 80% of the area's crops are destroyed. This comes as President Trump made his way to survey the damage in Puerto Rico firsthand. Hurricane Maria creating chaos in Puerto Rico after the Category 4 storm hit last month. The Secretary of Ag there putting crop losses at 80% or an estimated $780 million in value. It devastated crops like banana, plantains, and coffee. President Trump arriving in Puerto Rico Tuesday to see that devastation. Most of the island still doesn't have electricity, and the administration has faced criticism over its response. While it says it's had more than 10,000 federal officials there on the ground, and urban search and rescue teams have covered the entire island. Farm Journal Washington correspondent Jim Wiesmeyer saying the Trump administration is expected to request between $10 and $15 billion of disaster aid by the end of the week. And the devastation from Hurricane Irma continues as Southwest Florida works to recover. The Packer reporting citrus groves damaged by the hurricane have an estimated fruit loss of 60 to 70%. But now producers are looking for federal aid to help. Lee Jones, general manager for Gardner, Florida Citrus, telling our reporting partners, quote, "How are we going to survive this? If the feds don't step in with some disaster assistance, we're toast." Back in Washington, later today, Virginia Representative Bob Goodlatte is expected to see a Judiciary Committee vote on his newly proposed agriculture guest worker program. The H-2C bill would end the current H-2A visa and move its oversight to the USDA. It also allows ag employers to apply for year-round workers and not require employers to provide housing or transportation. It would, however, require a wage scale 15% above a state's minimum wage and allows currently illegal farm workers to participate in this new program. The bill offers 500,000 visas annually. Still to come, some prefer a little Mozart while indulging in a glass of wine, but what happens when you play Mozart while growing grapes? We'll show you next on AgDay.
In the country, brought to you by Kubota. Learn more about Kubota SSV Series skid steers at Kubota.com or demo one at your local Kubota dealer today.
It's harvest season at vineyards across the country, and in Italy, this tradition is getting an air of ambiance as grape pickers work to the sound of Mozart. At the Al Paradiso di Frasina vineyard of Tuscany, the music is not for the workers' benefit, it's for the benefit of the vines. This is perhaps the world's most musical vineyard. The founder planting 10 acres of grapes back in 2000 and began playing different kinds of music. Well, university scientists then joined his effort, finding that Mozart offers benefits for both plant protection and health. Back in 2012, a study by Florence University found that the sugar content and the chemical makeup of the grapes were different depending on whether the plants had been exposed to the music or not. Plants subjected to sound had a richer intensity of aromatic substances. Well, there you go. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. Start your day with us. For Mike Hoffman and all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.
AgDay, brought to you by Ram Commercial, America's longest lasting heavy-duty pickups.